She was nobody, a waitress in worn-out shoes, invisible to the world until one moment changed everything. When a shower of crystal glasses rained down on a little boy in the most dangerous booth in the city, she didn't think. She jumped, 15 pieces of glass in her back, blood on a marble floor, and the eyes of the most powerful, most terrifying man in the city locked onto her like she had just become the only thing that mattered. She saved his son, but she had no idea. She had just walked into a world she could never leave. What happens when the most dangerous man alive decides you belong to him and you realize you don't want to run? Welcome to our channel, where we explore the raw, complicated world of powerful men, unexpected love, and the unbreakable bonds of family. If you believe that even the darkest hearts can be touched by a single act of courage, you're in the right place. This story reminds us that true courage isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing someone else's safety over your own, even when it costs you everything. If this story already has your heart racing, hit that like button. Drop a comment telling us, would you have jumped? Share this with someone who loves a story that hits differently, and subscribe so you never miss a chapter of the lives we bring to life here.
And then there was silence. Well, not total silence. The restaurant exploded with gasps and shouts, the sound of chairs scraping and people running, but the deadly rain of glass was over. I stayed there, hunched over the child, my whole body shaking from adrenaline and pain. Do not move. The voice came from right above me, deep and dark, with an accent that made his words sound almost like music. Italian, my spinning mind supplied, for no good reason. Matteo, are you okay? The child, Matteo, whimpered against my chest but managed a quiet, "No, Papa. Papa." Oh my God, what had I done? What kind of trouble had I jumped into? Strong hands grabbed my shoulders, firm but surprisingly gentle, avoiding the areas with the most glass. "Look at me," the voice ordered, and even though every part of me screamed to run and hide, to become invisible again, I lifted my head. The man kneeling next to me took what little breath I had left. He was handsome in the way that truly dangerous things are, with a sharp jawline, dark eyes I could not read, and a thin scar that ran from his left eyebrow up into his hairline, a silver line on his olive skin. His suit was perfect, even in the middle of all this chaos. It was a deep blue fabric that likely cost more than my old car. But it was his eyes that held me. They should have been cold and calculating, the eyes of a man who was used to people fearing him. Instead, they were burning with an intensity I could not quite place, something that made me feel truly seen for the first time in a very long time. Dangerously seen. "You are hurt," he stated. It was not a question. His eyes moved from my face down to my shoulder, where a piece of glass stuck out like a DS8, twisted piece of jewelry, and his expression changed. I saw a flash of pure rage that seemed to make the air around us feel electric. "I am fine," I whispered, but we both knew I was lying. Is Matteo okay? You knew his name." Those dark eyes narrowed, studying me with a focus that felt like he was looking right through me. "How did you know his name?" "I heard you. I just heard you say it." My words came out jumbled and weak. Everything was hurting. This was all wrong. I had broken my number one rule of survival, which was to never, ever get noticed. "Papa, she saved me." Matteo had crawled out from under me, and his small hands reached for my face with a gentleness that made my eyes burn. The glass was going to fall on me, but she jumped. The man, his father, stayed perfectly still, his hands still gripping my shoulders. I could feel the tension coming off of him like heat. Around us, the whole restaurant seemed to be holding its breath. Fee was ugly jewels, and his whole demeanor changed. I saw a flare of fury so intense the air itself seemed to vibrate. "I am okay," I breathed, but we both knew I was not. "Is he okay? Is Matteo?" You said his name. His dark gaze narrowed, pinning me with a look that felt like surgery without anesthetic. How did you know his name? I heard it. My words came out tangled and weak. Everything was pain. Everything felt broken. I had violated the most basic rule of staying alive: do not draw attention. Daddy, she saved me. Mateo crawled out from under me. His little hands touched my face with a gentleness that stung my eyes. The glass was about to hit me, but she leaped in front. His father, Papa, stayed perfectly still, his hands on my shoulder, but I felt the tension pour off him like heat from a summer sidewalk. The entire restaurant seemed to stop breathing. Sophie was crying somewhere in the background, saying she was sorry to anyone who would listen. Marcus showed up with a first aid kit, but he just stood there about 3 feet away, too scared to come any closer to the corner booth without being told to. He was waiting for permission from the man whose son I had just saved, the man whose child I had touched without asking. "What is your name?" he asked, and his tone made it very clear that saying no was not an option. "Elena," I whispered. "Elena Santos." "Elena." He said my name slowly, as if he was tasting every letter. In his mouth, my simple name sounded like something else entirely. It sounded precious and dangerous, and like it now belonged to him. "I am Dante Moretti." The name dropped into the silence like a stone hitting water, sending ripples of shock across the room. I saw the recognition on the faces around us, on the older staff, on the manager who suddenly appeared looking pale and terrified, and on the few diners who knew what that name really meant. Moretti. The family that controlled half of the city's dark secrets, but owned enough real businesses to look respectable. It was a name spoken in warnings and in newspaper stories that never dared to print the whole truth. I had just saved the son of the most dangerous man in the entire city. I should go clean up. I tried to get up, to get away, but Dante's hand tightened on my shoulder. It was a gentle pressure, but I could not move. "You need a hospital," he said. "Marco." He did not even raise his voice, but one of the men from his booth was instantly by his side, with a phone already in his hand. "Call Dr. Russo, tell him to meet us at the estate, and find out who is responsible for this." He motioned toward the broken glass and to where Sophie was still crying. "An accident." The way he said the word accident made it sound like he did not believe it for a second. "Sir, really, I can just go to an emergency room. I have insurance, kind of." The lie faded as Dante finally let go of my shoulder and stood up. He seemed to fill the entire space, making the high ceilings feel much lower. "You saved my son," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying through the silent room. Everyone strained to hear him, though no one would ever admit it. "You threw yourself in front of danger for a child you do not even know. Whatever life you had before this moment, your plans, your problems, your whole world, it is all different now. Now, Elena Santos, I always pay my debts. And this debt," he said, his dark, inescapable eyes locking with mine, "I will take as long as I need to repay." It was meant to sound like he was grateful, but instead, it sounded like a threat, or maybe a promise, or something far more complicated than either one. Behind him, Mateo was clutching his little toy car, smiling at me with the sweet innocence of a child, completely unaware that his father's words had just wrapped around me like chains made of silk. The glass in my back throbbed with my heartbeat, each pulse a reminder that I had been noticed, I had been marked, and I had been claimed, a man whose attention was far more deadly than neglect. When Dante offered his hand to pull me up, I just stared at it. His fingers were long, a platinum watch flashed, and a ring showed a crest I did not know. Taking his hand was crossing a line I could never go back over. But I had no other option. I had already jumped into his life. Now his life was wrapping around me. I put my shaking hand into his, and his grip felt like a lock turning or a cage shutting. The leather in Dante's car had the scent of money and peril. It was rich, with a hint of cologne that cost more than my entire paycheck, my former paycheck. I was sure I was fired from Aurelios after bleeding on their spotless marble and causing a scene at their top table. I sat completely still, feeling Matteo pressed against my good side, his little hand grabbing my torn uniform. Dante sat opposite us, turned toward me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. The driver, Marco, was silent and skilled, his eyes occasionally flicking to the rearview mirror with a blank look. Another man, Luca, who was bigger and scarred, sat in the front seat, talking low and fast in Italian on a phone. I only understood a few words. The accident, the girl, the boy. "Does it hurt?" Matteo asked, his voice tiny in the thick silence. "A little," I said, but that was a huge lie. My back felt like it had been ripped apart by claws. Every tiny move sent a fresh jolt of pain through me. But this little boy's worry made me want to be strong for him, to show him that kindness did not always come with a future cost. I was starting to think my own bill would be very high. "You are so brave," Matteo said, his dark eyes just like his father's, watching my face with an unsettling focus. "Like the heroes in my stories." "Are you a hero?" "No, sweetie. I am just a waitress with very good reflexes." Dante's voice cut through my self-doubt. His gaze had not left my face since we got in the car. The pressure of his stare made me feel exposed and trapped at the same time. Most people would have just looked away, deciding it was not their business. "Why did you not?" The question felt like a trap. I knew my answer could say too much, but the pain and exhaustion had worn away my normal defenses, leaving only the simple truth. "He is a child," I said softly. "That is reason enough." Something changed in Dante's face. Maybe surprise, maybe understanding. "Do you have children of your own?" "No." The words shot out, sharp with years of sorrow and a future that vanished when Michael left. "No children, no family, just me," Dante echoed. But the way he said it sounded less like I was alone and more like I was available. "No one is expecting you home tonight, then?" The hidden meaning in that question made my stomach clench. "I need to call my landlord. Tell him the rent will be late again. Your rent is handled." Dante took out his phone and typed quickly. "For the next year, think of it as the first payment on my debt to you." My throat went dry. "You cannot. That is not right. I do not even know the amount. It does not matter." He put his phone away, his eyes locked on mine. "You took shrapnel that was meant for my son. No amount of money can truly repay that, but I am going to try. Your rent is paid. You will never see a medical bill. Your boss at Aurelios was told you are on paid leave indefinitely. So I am fired," I said with a bitter taste in my mouth. "You are being protected," Dante corrected, his voice smooth but with an edge of steel. "What happened tonight was not random, Elena. Someone tried to harm my son. You stood between him and that danger." He leaned in, and the car suddenly felt cramped. "Now, whoever is responsible will see you as a target. Both of those are very dangerous roles." Fear, icy and sharp, pierced through the pain. "What are you trying to say?" "I am saying your ability to be invisible, the very thing you have used as a shield for so long, is now gone. Every person in that restaurant saw you protect Matteo. By tomorrow, everyone important will know your name and your connection to my family." His jaw was tight. "I cannot make you anonymous again, but I can offer my protection. The only question is if you are smart enough to take it." The car drove through gates that opened by themselves, showing a long driveway with perfect hedges and security cameras hidden as lights. The mansion looked like it was from a magazine I could never buy. It was modern, but with classic Italian style, all stone and glass, and old money elegance in a New World setting. This was a fortress disguised as a family home, and I was being brought inside. "I do not know what is going on," I whispered, mostly talking to myself. This morning I was in my tiny apartment, stressing about bills and my broken fridge. Now I am in a car with. I paused, realizing Matteo was listening, with a man who owes you his world. Dante finished for me. And who always pays what he owes, Elena. Always. The car pulled up to the main door, where a man in a lab coat waited with a medical kit. Dr. Russo, I guessed. Marco opened my door and gave me a hand. The second I stood up, my legs started to shake. The adrenaline was gone, leaving just pain and shock. Dante was there in a flash, his arm around my waist, holding me up with a gentleness that did not match the stories I had heard about him. He smelled of expensive clothes and something else, something dark, maybe gunpowder, or just the sharp scent of danger that sticks to men who operate in the dark. I can stand, I said weakly. Just let me. His breath was warm on my hair, and I hated that my body reacted to him, that even in pain, I could feel the solid strength of his body, the power he held back under his suit. The house inside was as perfect as I had imagined, with marble floors and dark wood. The art on the walls was probably worth more than my entire building. A woman in her 60s appeared, looking stern in a black dress. Her eyes grew wide when she saw me. "Oh my God," she gasped. "Dante, what happened?" "Matteo is fine, Ani. This is Elena. She saved his life." Dante led me down a hall with the doctor right behind us. "Prepare the blue guest suite. She will be staying here for a while." "What?" "No, I cannot do that." The panic finally hit me. "I have a job. I have a life." "What you have," Dante said, guiding me into a room that was like a luxury suite, "is a dozen cuts, glass stuck in your back, and shock that is about to hit you very hard in about 10 minutes. You need a doctor, and you need to rest. You can argue with me tomorrow." He set me down on the edge of a huge bed with sheets so fine they felt like silk. He stepped away so Dr. Russo could get to me, but he did not leave the room. He just leaned against the far wall, watching me with that same intense focus. "I need to take off her shirt," Dr. Russo said softly. I felt my cheeks get hot. "I will turn my back," Dante said, but he did not offer to go, and I knew it was useless to argue. The doctor helped me out of my ruined uniform, being gentle with the glass still in my skin. I heard him suck in a breath, and I felt his expert fingers checking the wounds. I tried not to make a sound. 15 lacerations, Dr. Russo said, clearly speaking to Dante. 3 pieces of glass are still in there. She got very lucky. Nothing vital was hit, but there will be scars. Make sure they are minimal." Dante's voice was flat and hard, but I could hear the anger simmering beneath it. "Whatever it takes, whatever doctors you need." "I will do what I can," the doctor replied. "This is going to hurt," he told me. "I have to get the glass out before I can stitch you up." I nodded and gripped the bed, bracing for a pain that I knew would be awful. But then, I felt a warm hand close over mine. Dante had moved without a sound and was now kneeling by the bed, holding my hand. "Look at me," he ordered quietly, "not at what he is doing. Just me." I met his dark, unreadable eyes, which held more secrets than I could ever guess, and I tried to hold on as the doctor started to work. "Tell me about yourself, Elena Santos," Dante said, his thumb making slow circles on my hand. The distraction was a welcome relief. "Where did you grow up?" "Here," I gasped out as the first shard of glass was pulled free, sending fire across my back. "Born and raised on the east side." "My parents—" I stopped, catching my breath. "Your parents?" he asked, his hand tightening a little. "They died. A car wreck when I was 19. I have been alone ever since." The story came out easily, pulled free by the pain and his steady touch, which made it feel safe to talk. "I went to community college for a bit, dropped out when I ran out of money. I have been a waitress since then." "And before tonight, what did you want from life?" His question was so unexpected, His tone was so personal, as if my answer truly meant something to him. I wanted. I bit down on my lip as another piece was removed. Tears I would not let fall burned behind my eyes. I wished I could be someone who mattered, someone unforgettable. It sounds ridiculous, does it not? The girl who craved invisibility now wanted to be noticed. Not ridiculous, Dante said softly. It is human. We all want our lives to have meaning, Elena. We just pursue it in our own ways. I built an empire. You saved a child. Which of those do you believe history will remember with more kindness? The question was so startling, so authentic, that I nearly laughed. You want me to judge you? I want you to see me, he corrected. To really see the man, not the name or the stories you have heard. Because I see you, Elena, and I am just beginning to realize what I have found. His confession should have frightened me. Instead, it settled on my skin like a searing brand, marking me as deeply as the cuts Dr. Russo was stitching. Closed. All finished, the doctor announced, applying the bandages with an expert touch. Keep them clean and dry. Return in 7 days for a checkup. And, he paused, with a quick look at Dante. Try to take it easy for the next few days. The stitches require time to heal. She is not going anywhere, Dante assured him, standing up with effortless grace. Thank you, Antonio. Marco will escort you out. The doctor packed his bag and was gone, leaving me alone with Dante. The room suddenly felt both suffocating and enormous. I sat on the side of the bed in my bra and uniform pants, my bandaged back making me feel more exposed than ever before. Dante went to a dresser and pulled out what was clearly an expensive silk shirt. Arms up, he said. I can get dressed on my own. Humor me. He knelt in front of me again, carefully guiding my arms into the sleeves with a tenderness that caught me by surprise. His fingers worked the buttons with slow deliberation. His knuckles brushed against my collarbone, and every single touch felt purposeful, like a claim. Why are you doing this? I whispered. Why do you care so much? His hands paused on the very last button, and he met my gaze. He was so close I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, so close I could feel the warmth of his breath on my throat. Because you jumped, he said, his voice simple and certain. You did it without a second thought, without knowing who we were or what it might cost you. You just jumped. Do you understand how rare that is, Elena? True, unconditional selflessness. My whole life, I have been surrounded by people who measure every move, every word, every single breath. And then there was you, a woman I did not know, who threw herself on broken glass to protect my son. How could I not care about someone capable of such an act? His words wrapped around me like the silk shirt, gentle and confining. I do not belong in this world, I told him, trying to make him understand. I do not know the rules here, or what is expected. I will only disappoint you. You exceeded every expectation I ever had just by being alive. Dante's hand lifted to cup my face, his thumb tracing the line of my cheekbone with a gentleness that shattered my defenses. Sleep now. Tomorrow we will talk about your new circumstances. But tonight, you are safe. I give you my word on that. Safe. That word should have brought me peace. Instead, as I watched him go, shutting the door gently behind him, I could not help but wonder if safety in Dante Moretti's world was simply another name for a cage, and why that thought was not nearly as frightening as it should have been. I woke to sunlight flooding in through unfamiliar windows and the very distinct feeling that my entire back had been set on fire. Each breath sent a fresh jolt of pain through my back. Every slight movement was a stark reminder that yesterday was real. The glass, the blood, the dark-eyed man who brought me to his fortress and made my debt his own. The clock on the bedside table said 10:47 a.m. I had slept for 13 hours. Panic seized me instantly. My shift at Aurelio started at 6. Marcus would be enraged. They would split the tips without me. I was going to lose my... And then I remembered. There was no more Aurelios, no more being invisible, no more normal. A gentle knock at the door cut through my frantic thoughts. "Miss Santos," a woman's cautious, accented voice called. "May I enter?" "Yes," I managed to say, pulling the silk sheets up to my chin, even though I was fully dressed in Dante's shirt. The door opened, revealing the woman from the night before. Agnes. She was carrying a tray loaded with coffee, fruit, and pastries that smelled absolutely heavenly. Her rigid expression from yesterday had softened a bit, though a deep exhaustion was still visible in her eyes. "Mr. Moretti sent me with your breakfast," she said, setting the tray down with practiced ease. "He also wanted me to tell you that Dr. Russo is coming this afternoon to check on you." She paused for a moment, then said, "And he asked me to show you the wardrobe he had arranged for you this morning." "Wardrobe?" I repeated, sounding foolish. Agnes went over to the closet and opened it. Inside was what must have been thousands of dollars in clothing. There were jeans, dresses, and casual outfits, all of which looked to be exactly my size. The bottom shelf was lined with shoes, from sneakers to high heels I would never have the confidence to wear. How did he... when... I could not even form a complete sentence. I was so overwhelmed by what this meant. "Mr. Moretti is remarkably thorough when he is motivated," Agnes noted dryly. "He had his staff working on it all night. Everything should be your size, but if anything needs to be adjusted, the tailor can be called back." She walked to the door, then stopped. "He has requested your company when you feel ready." He insisted there was no hurry, though. Her lips almost curved into a smile. "He has been looking in on you every hour since the sun came up. Matteo, too. That boy has grown quite attached to you." After she was gone, I just sat on the enormous bed, staring at a closet of clothes I did not ask for, eating pastries I did not earn, inside a house where I was a stranger. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, to just grab my wrecked uniform and march out the main gate, and damn the consequences. But Dante's words from the night before kept replaying in my mind. "Someone wanted to harm my son. You put yourself between him and that harm. If he was right, and if what happened was not an accident, then leaving this place could be the most dangerous move I could make." I had been noticed, marked, and connected to the Morettis, whether I wanted it or not. That realization should have filled me with dread. Instead, it felt strangely like a relief to finally matter. Even if mattering brought danger, to be seen, even if being seen was a form of captivity. Good heavens, what was wrong with me? I showered with great care, making sure to keep the bandages dry as the doctor ordered. Then I got into a pair of jeans and a soft sweater that fit flawlessly, because of course it did. Dante Moretti did nothing halfway, and that included outfitting the woman who saved his son. Agnes found me drifting through the hallway, looking completely lost. "He is in his study," she said, pointing toward a set of large double doors at the end of the hall. "It is the third door on the left. Just knock." The study smelled of leather and expensive cigars, filled with dark wood and bookshelves that reached the ceiling, lined with books in several languages. Dante was behind an enormous desk covered in papers, with a phone held to his ear. He was speaking in rapid Italian, his voice clipped and threatening. But the second he laid eyes on me in the doorway, his entire presence softened. He hung up the phone in the middle of a word. "Elena." He stood and walked around the desk with that smooth, predatory grace that always made my heart race. "How are you feeling?" "Like I have been stabbed a few dozen times," I admitted, "but I am alive." "Thanks to your physician, and to your own toughness," he replied. He studied me with an unsettling intensity, his eyes taking in the clothes, and the slight hunch in my posture as I tried to protect my back. "They suit you." "You really should not have," I started to say, but he lifted a hand to stop me. "We have established that I settle my debts. Consider the clothes a small first payment." He motioned to a leather chair in front of his desk. "Sit down, please. We have to discuss what is going to happen now. I lowered myself into the chair, hyper aware of his stare on me, watching every wince, every sharp intake of breath. You said last night was deliberate. It was deliberate, Dante confirmed as he sat back down. But instead of looking at his papers, his gaze was locked on me. The woman who dropped the tray of glasses, Sophie, I believe, has been an employee at Aurelios for 3 years without a single issue. Last night, she took a phone call 30 minutes before her shift began. After the call, she was agitated, on edge. Then, the accident happened at the precise second my attention was split. His jaw clenched. Someone paid her to make a scene. The goal was to create chaos, to get my men to respond, to pull them away from Matteo. The one variable they never counted on was you. My mouth suddenly felt like cotton. Who would ever want to hurt a child? There are many people who want to hurt me, Elena. Using Matteo is simply the most direct way to accomplish that. He leaned back, and I saw a deep tiredness in his eyes for the very first time. I have made enemies in my profession, rivals who imagine that killing my heir would weaken me, to send a message, to provoke a war, and they are not mistaken. If anything had happened to Matteo, his voice died out. But the darkness that crossed his face finished the sentence with a level of violence I did not want to think about. And Sophie? I asked in a low voice. She has been questioned. Her story is that a man threatened her little girl if she refused to do what he said. We are locating him now. The way Dante said it suggested that man did not have long to live. But that is not your problem. Your problem is to accept that when you stepped into this, you became a piece of it. The people who planned last night's events know you stopped them. They know what you look like. They know who you are, and they will want to know the reason a waitress would throw her life away for my son. Because it was the right thing to do, I said, and I could not keep the frustration out of my voice. Not everything in this world is a transaction. I already know that, he interrupted, his voice surprisingly soft. That's precisely what makes you dangerous, Elena. You're a good person in a world that profits from cruelty. It makes you a wild card. It makes you... He trailed off, looking for the right word. Valuable. The way he said it made me feel like an item up for auction, and I hated it. So what does that make me? Your prisoner? A witness you have to hide? I asked. What is my role in your world, Mr. Moretti? Dante, he corrected me. And you are whatever you choose to be. But you will be it here, with my protection, until this is over. And how long is that going to be? His smile was so sharp it could cut glass. As long as it takes. A knock on the door cut off any reply I might have had. Marco walked in without an invitation, his face set like stone. Boss, we have a problem. The Calabresi family wants a meeting. They claim it's about what happened last night. Dante's entire body went rigid. I watched him transform right in front of me. The man who had gently buttoned my shirt was gone. In his place was someone cold and deadly, as if carved from ice and fury. When? His voice could have frozen fire. Tonight, neutral territory. They swear they're innocent. They want to talk peace before this blows up. How convenient, Dante said, standing to button his suit jacket with sharp, deliberate motions. Tell them the warehouse at 8. Take all the usual precautions. His eyes shifted to me. And double the security on the house. Nobody gets within 100 yards of Elena or Matteo unless they're on the list. Boss, Marco paused, glancing my way. Should we move her somewhere more secure? If the Calabresi family finds out about her? They don't, Dante stated coldly. Not yet. And that's how it's going to stay. She remains right here, where I can ensure she is safe. After Marco was gone, a heavy silence filled the space between us. I finally spoke up. You're going to a meeting with the men who might have tried to kill your son. I am going to a meeting with men who want me to think they had nothing to do with it, Dante corrected. We will see if they are telling the truth, or if this is just another trap. He walked from behind the desk and stood over me, forcing me to crane my neck to see his face. You will stay inside today. Matteo has been asking for you non-stop. Maybe you could spend some time with him. Agnesa will show you where the playroom is. It was an order, not a request, but I nodded. And tonight, while I'm gone, you'll be locked in this house with enough guards to protect a president. You will trust that I know exactly what I am doing. He reached up, his fingers lightly brushing my jaw with a startling tenderness. I won't allow anything to happen to you, Elena. You saved my son. That makes you mine to protect. Mine. The word hung in the air, a mix of promise and possession. I found I couldn't look away from him, trapped by the intensity in his eyes. I'm not yours, I whispered, but my own voice sounded weak and unsure. Not yet, Dante murmured, his thumb slowly tracing my bottom lip. But you will be, Elena Santos. The moment you shielded Mateo, you became mine. The only question now is how long it will take you to accept it. And then he was gone. He left me standing alone in his study, surrounded by the scent of his cologne and his words, which felt like chains tightening around my chest, stealing my breath and my freedom. An hour later, Mateo found me in a playroom so big it looked like a toy store had exploded inside it. He ran and jumped at me with an energy only a 5-year-old can have. I caught him gently, trying not to hurt my back. "You're here!" he shouted, his little hands cupping my face. "Papa said you would stay with us. Are you staying forever? Can you read me a story? Do you like dragons? I have 17 dragon toys. Do you want to see them?" His pure, innocent happiness was a soothing comfort against the darkness of Dante's life. I felt a real smile spread across my face for the first time since I woke up here. "Show me all of them," I said, letting him pull me over to his collection. We spent the afternoon making tall towers out of blocks and having huge pretend battles with his dragons and knights. Matteo talked the whole time, telling me all about his school, his friends, and his nonna who lives in Italy and sends him cookies that taste like sunshine. He asked about my life with a child's simple curiosity, and I found myself carefully changing the details, making my lonely life sound like a story fit for a little boy. "Do you have a mommy?" he asked out of the blue. The question was a punch to the gut. "No, sweetie. My mom passed away when I was little." "Mine too," he said, his voice suddenly quiet. "My mommy went to heaven when I was a baby. Papa doesn't like to talk about her. It makes him sad." He leaned into me, being careful of my bandages. "But you're here now. Maybe you could be like a mommy for a little bit." My throat felt tight. "Oh, Mateo, I'm only here for a short time." "Papa says you are staying as long as you need to," he cut in with perfect kid logic. "And I need you to stay forever, because you saved me and you're nice and you smell like cookies, even though Agnesa said you haven't been in the kitchen. It's weird, but I like it." I gave him a gentle hug. This sweet child was stuck in a dangerous life that wasn't his fault. In that moment, I understood with a frightening clarity why Dante would burn down the whole city for him. I also understood why I had thrown myself on broken glass for him, without thinking twice. Some people just need to be protected. Mateo was one of them. The only question was if I would survive being caught in the orbit of the Moretti family, or if I would get burned before I had a chance to get away. As Mateo drifted off to sleep against my shoulder, a toy dragon still in his hand, I gazed out the playroom window at the property below. It was beautiful, perfectly landscaped, and crawling with men in expensive suits with guns hidden underneath. A golden cage is still a cage. But God help me, I wasn't so sure that I wanted to leave anymore. Night settled over the Moretti estate with a tense silence. I had put Mateo to bed an hour ago, after reading him 3 stories about knights and dragons until he finally fell asleep, his little hand still holding onto mine. Agnes had gently led me out, promising she would stay with him. Her love for the boy was clear in everything she did. Now I was in my temporary room, watching from the window as Dante's cars got ready to leave. I could easily spot him from this distance. He was taller than his men, and moved with a smooth confidence that belonged to predators and kings. He was dressed completely in black tonight, which somehow made him look even more threatening, like a shadow brought to life. As if he could feel me watching, he looked up. Our eyes locked across the courtyard, across the dark space between us. Even through the glass, I felt the force of his gaze like a touch. He lifted a hand, not to wave, but as a silent promise. I will be back. Then he slipped into the back of a black armored vehicle and was gone. I was left with my heart pounding in my chest, certain that tonight was going to change everything. I tried to keep my mind busy. I walked around the house, or at least the parts I could get to, guided by the silent watch of security cameras and the slight nods from guards posted everywhere. The library drew me in. It had windows from the floor to the ceiling that looked out on gardens lit with soft lights. The shelves were packed with books in Italian, English, and other languages I did not recognize. I took out a worn book of poetry by Neruda, its spine cracked from being read so many times. I had just gotten comfortable in a leather chair when my phone vibrated. It was my old, cracked phone, which was somehow getting service inside this fortress. An unknown number. My thumb hovered over the ignore button, but something made me pick it up. Hello? There was only the sound of heavy, deliberate breathing. Who is this? I asked, my voice firmer than I felt. The girl who thinks she's a hero. The voice was a man's, but it sounded warped and robotic. You should have kept your head down, little waitress. Now you're a problem. A cold fear washed over me. I have no idea what you're talking about. You jumped in front of Dante Moretti's kid. Very brave, very foolish. There was a pause. Did he tell you what we do with problems in our world? They get erased, Elena Santos. They stop existing. And all of Moretti's protection won't save you when you become more trouble than you're worth. The call ended. I sat there, frozen. The phone was shaking in my hand, Neruda's love poems completely forgotten. They knew my name. They had my number. They could get to me even here, inside Dante's fortress, surrounded by all his guards and his promises. I won't let anything happen to you. But how could he stop something he did not even know was coming? The door flew open and I nearly screamed, but then I saw it was Marco, his face grim. Miss Santos, you need to come with me. Right now. What is it? Is it Matteo? The boy's fine. We have a security situation. Let's go. His hand moved to the gun on his hip, and the danger suddenly felt very real. He led me through hallways I didn't know, down a set of stairs that seemed to go deep into the ground. The elegant lighting gave way to plain, functional lights, the walls turning to concrete and steel. A panic room, I thought, or something similar. The room he took me to was a command center. There were monitors showing dozens of camera feeds and all sorts of communication gear. 3 other guards were already there, their weapons out and ready. Marco stood me in the middle of the room, his body placed standing between me and the only exit. What is going on? I asked, my fear turning into anger. Where is Dante? Marco's eyes were glued to the monitors. The meeting was a setup, he said, his voice low. It wasn't the Caliber's family. Someone used their name to lure the boss out. We can't reach the convoy. My world started to spin. What do you mean you can't reach them? It means somebody is making a move tonight, and they are using you as the bait. He finally turned to me, and I saw real concern on his scarred face. How did they get your number, Miss Santos? I do not know. I have had this number for years. It is not... Then the call came back to me. Someone called me 10 minutes ago. They knew my name, knew I worked for Matteo. They said I was a problem that had to go away. Marco's jaw clenched. Your phone. Give it to me right now. My fingers trembled as I handed it to him. I watched as he expertly popped out the battery. They were tracking you. They probably cloned your phone after you gave your info to the hospital, or they stole it from the restaurant's employee files. He looked at another guard. Sweep the entire house. If they had her phone, they could have planted other things. The minutes felt like hours. I stared at the security screens, trying to understand what I was seeing. Gates, gardens, the long drive leading out to the street. It all looked so quiet, so normal. But I could feel the tension coming off the men in the room. They were like soldiers waiting for a fight. Then, on one screen, I saw something move. A person appeared at the edge of the property, and then another. They moved like soldiers, sticking to the shadows, trying to avoid the cameras, but not quite succeeding. Marco's security system was top of the line, picking them up on infrared and motion sensors. Breach at the south perimeter, a guard announced. 4 hostiles, armed and moving toward the main house. Where is Mateo? My voice was sharp with panic. He is in the safe room. It has reinforced steel and biometric locks. They would need explosives to get in, and we would have them down before they got that close. Marco was typing fast, speaking into his headset in Italian, too quick for me to understand. But they are not going for Mateo. They are coming for you. They know you are in here. How is that even possible? Marco's face turned to ice. Because someone on our side told them, we have a traitor. The power went out. Red emergency lights immediately flooded the room. I heard men shouting. The sharp sound of gunfire echoed from outside. Suddenly, Marco's hand was on my arm, pulling me to another door. We are moving you to a second location. Stay right with me. Do not make a sound. And if I tell you to run, you run. Do you understand? I could only nod, too scared to make a sound. The door led to a tunnel, a real underground tunnel, and then we were running. Marco was in front, with 2 guards behind me, our feet pounding on the concrete. More gunshots, closer this time, and the bitter smell of smoke started to drift through the air vents. How long until Dante is here? I managed to gasp out. He is 10 minutes away, maybe less if he is breaking every traffic law in the city, which he almost certainly is. Marco pulled me around a corner to another door, one that needed his palm print and a scan of his eye. But 10 minutes is a lifetime in a gunfight. The door slid open to a garage full of black armored vehicles all ready to go. Marco shoved me toward an SUV, but before we got there, the garage entrance exploded in a cloud of concrete and twisted metal. 3 men stepped out of the smoke with their weapons up. I could see they were the kind of people who killed for a living. Marco and his guards started shooting right away. The noise in the garage was deafening, so loud my ears were ringing and I could not think or even breathe. "Get in the car!" Marco yelled, pushing me so hard I stumbled toward the SUV. My back screamed as I pulled the door open. A hand grabbed my arm. It was the wrong hand, the wrong grip, way too rough and violent. I turned and saw a man with empty eyes pressing a gun to my head. "Stop shooting or she dies," he shouted in a thick accent. The shooting stopped instantly. Marco stood there, his gun still raised but now useless. His face was pure murder. "You do not want to do this. You have no clue what Moretti will do to you if you touch her." "Moretti is dead, or he will be soon," the man said with no emotion. "And this girl is worth more to us alive, for now. She is our insurance policy, our way out of here. We were not expecting the Moretti heir to have a guardian angel." Gun pressed even harder against my temple. "Drop your weapons, all of you, or I will paint these walls with her brains." I had never seen Marco look unsure before, but for a second he hesitated. He knew his boss. He knew Dante would want him to save me, no matter the cost. But he was also a soldier who knew when a fight was lost. "Do it," I said, my voice quiet. "Marco, drop the guns. Miss Santos." "Do it," my voice cracked. "I am not dying tonight because of your pride. Drop them." Marco's gun hit the concrete floor with a clatter, and the others followed. The man holding me smiled, the kind of smile you see on someone who has already won. "Smart girl. Now you are going to walk with me, nice and calm. If you try anything stupid like you did with that kid, I will shoot you in the kneecaps and drag you out. Clear?" I nodded. He started pulling me backward to the ruined entrance. I met Marco's eyes one last time and saw the promise in them. We will find you. Then I was pulled out into the smoke and the dark. A van was waiting outside with its engine running. Two more men were inside. I was thrown into the back like a sack of potatoes, my head hitting the floor so hard I saw stars. The door slammed. The van sped off. As the ringing in my ears faded, I heard the first man talking on a phone. We have the girl, Moretti's new little pet. Tell the boss we are taking her to the warehouse. He paused. Yes, the one down by the docks, where we were supposed to meet him tonight. A cold laugh followed. Let's just see how much his son's savior is really worth to him. I lay on the cold metal floor, my back on fire and my head pounding. I finally understood what Dante meant about debts. He owed me for saving Matteo. But now I had cost him something too. I was a weakness, a target his enemies could use against him. The real question was, would he think I was worth saving? Or had I just become another problem that needed to be erased? The van turned sharply, and I slid into the wall, a burst of pain shooting through my injuries. But I did not scream. I would not give them that satisfaction. If this was how I was going to die, it would not be as a victim. It would be as the woman who threw herself on broken glass for a child she barely knew. And maybe, just maybe, that would mean something in this dark world I had fallen into, even if nobody ever knew my name again. The warehouse smelled like oil and seawater. Years of business deals, both legal and illegal, had soaked into the concrete. They tied me to a chair in the middle of the huge, empty space. The knots were tight, professional enough to hold me but not stop my blood from flowing. Then they left me with a single guard while the others got ready for Dante's arrival. Because he was coming. All of us knew that. The only question was if he was coming to rescue me or to clean up a loose end. You are very calm, the guard said. He was smoking a cigarette by a rust-colored pillar. He looked younger than the rest, maybe in his mid-20s, with a scar cutting through his eyebrow. Most people in your spot would be crying, begging, or worse. Would any of that help? I asked. My voice felt surprisingly steady. He thought about it. No, but it would be more interesting to watch. Sorry to disappoint you. A small smile touched his lips. Did you really jump on broken glass for the Moretti kid? That was not just some story? It was not a story. It was instinct. I tried to move, just a little, to test the ropes. A sharp pain shot through my back. The rough treatment had torn open some of my stitches. I could feel warm blood soaking through the sweater I was wearing. He is 5 years old. He should not have to pay for what his father has done. None of us should, the guard said softly, and I saw a haunted look in his eyes. But we do. That is just how this world is. He took a final drag from his cigarette. For what it is worth, I told them this was a bad idea. Moretti does not bargain when it comes to his son, or anyone close to him. He will come here like an act of God, and we will all pay for it. Then why are you still here? Because I am already a dead man. We all are. The second we signed on for this war. He crushed the cigarette under his boot. But maybe you are not. Maybe, if you are smart, you will tell Moretti everything you saw here. Give him names, faces, any detail you can remember. It might be the only thing that keeps you alive past tonight. Before I could say anything, the main entrance exploded open. This was not a quiet professional entry. This was the entrance of someone who wanted everyone to know he was here, to fear him. Dante Moretti walked into the warehouse with a dozen armed men surrounding him. Even from all the way across the room, I could feel the rage coming off of him like heat. His suit jacket was torn at the shoulder. Blood, either his or someone else's, was splattered on his shirt. But he moved like a predator, with purpose in every single step. His eyes found me right away, and the look on his face made me hold my breath. It was not relief, not yet. It was something else. A look of possession. A look that said, mine. And you took What is mine? The man who had put the gun to my head, their leader, stepped out of the shadows. He was older, with graying hair and the easy confidence of a man who had survived this business for decades. Moretti, so glad you could make it. Russo. Dante's voice was cold enough to freeze blood. You have 30 seconds to let her go, before I turn everything you care about to ash. Always so theatrical. Your father would be ashamed. Russo's smile was cold and empty. The girl is mostly fine. I hear my men were not so gentle getting her here. My mistake. 20 seconds. Let us be reasonable men. Dante, you possess something I need. I want the details on the Calabresi family's port operations. Give me the information, and you can have the girl. We all go home. 15 seconds. Dante was motionless. He had not pulled a gun, but all his men had their hands on their weapons. You are measuring your life by the second, Russo. Decide how you will use what little time you have left. It is a bluff. You would never endanger her. The gunshot was faster than thought. The smoking guard, the young one with the scar on his eyebrow, fell with a clean hole in his skull. He was going for his gun, showing his intentions a moment too early. Dante never even glanced his way. His gaze was fixed on Russo, a pistol now in his grip. The barrel gave off a faint trail of smoke in the frigid air. 10 seconds. That was not a warning. That was a sample. My next shot will be through your head if Elena is not freed right now. The warehouse exploded into mayhem. Russo's crew pulled their guns. Dante's crew matched them instantly. I was suddenly at the heart of a standoff with enough guns to tear the place apart. The ropes bit into my skin as I tried to shrink, to shield myself, but there was no escape. You are crazy. Russo shuffled back to me, making my chair into his cover. You will get her killed in the fight. I am an excellent shot. Are you? Dante's grin was a horrifying sight, full of sharp teeth and the guarantee of pain. Because from my perspective, you are using a woman who saved my son's life as a poker chip. That means you have already sealed your fate. The only question left is how many of your men you take with you. Boss, one of Russo's men began, his voice shaking with fear. Maybe we should… Quiet! Russo jammed his pistol to my head, just like in the garage. I felt the cold steel touch my skin like a dreadful promise. Everybody drops their weapons, or I will kill her this instant. Time seemed to freeze, every second lasting an eternity. I saw Dante's jaw clench. I could almost see the math happening in his head. Angles, paths, who could be sacrificed. I saw the exact moment he determined my value to him. His face said it all. Everything. You are worth everything. You are not going to shoot her, Dante said, his tone becoming strangely calm. Because once you do, all deals are off. There will be no mercy, and your death will not be fast. I will keep you breathing for days, Russo, maybe weeks if I feel inventive. I will force you to see me tear down your entire life. Everyone you care for, your daughter Sophia in Milan, studying to be an architect. I will mail her a recording of you screaming, your mother in the Naples nursing home. Her last days on earth will be spent knowing her son pleaded for an end I refuse to give. You are bluffing. Am I? Dante moved forward, his men advancing with him like a single organism. It was a fluid movement born from years of practice and complete faith. You have been around long enough to know who I am. You know I do not make idle threats. When I promise pain, I always over-deliver. So, ask yourself if this information is worth more than everyone you love. I saw Russo's hand shake just a little against my head. I saw the doubt begin to shatter his confidence. Composure. He made a mistake. He assumed Dante would choose information over a woman he met just 2 days ago. He did not realize that for a man like Dante Moretti, certain obligations go beyond reason or business. Some debts are paid with blood and shattered glass, and the memory of a child's terror. Stand down, Russo finally choked out, his voice utterly broken. All of you, Lower your weapons. His crew paused for a moment before they obeyed. The warehouse echoed with the sound of guns being lowered, but not put away. Nobody was foolish enough for that. Russo pulled the pistol away from my head and backed away with his hands up. She is yours. Just take her. The intel is not worth all this. Dante closed the distance between us in a heartbeat. He was suddenly kneeling in front of me, his hands untying the knots with an unexpected tenderness, a stark contrast to the menace he had just shown. Are you injured? His voice was low and personal, just for my ears. My back, a few stitches pulled open, but I am all right. Dante, they said. I know what they said. The ropes came loose, and he helped me to my feet, his arm catching me as my knees gave out. I know it all, Elena, and they will answer for every second of terror they put you through. He looked back at Russo, and I felt him change. The gentle rescuer became the terrifying ruler again. Marco, get Miss Santos in the car. Have Dr. Russo meet us at the estate. No. The word slipped out before I could catch it. Dante's gaze whipped back to me. I want to watch. Whatever you do next, I need to see the real you. A new emotion crossed his face. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was respect. Elena, you do not have to see this. Yes, I do. I forced myself to stand taller, ignoring the pain and the wet patch of blood on my shirt, fighting every urge, telling me to flee. You told me I belong to this world now, that I am important, so let me see what that really means, the whole truth. Do not shield me from it. Dante watched me for a long time, and I could tell he was considering the consequences. At last, he gave a small nod. All right, but stay directly behind me. He faced Russo again, and his voice boomed through the building with total command. You laid a hand on what belongs to me. You threatened someone I protect. On any other day, that would be your death sentence. A slow and agonizing one, to serve as a lesson to others. Russo's face turned the color of ash. Moretti, I beg you. Dante held up a hand to cut him off. But you were smart enough to know you were beaten, and you yielded. That is the only reason you are still alive. You will get out of this city by morning. Everything you have here now belongs to me. Every connection, every agreement, every single dollar is now mine. Your family will not be harmed, only because you let Elena go without further injury. He took a step nearer, his voice sinking to a level that was more terrifying than any shout. But if I ever lay eyes on you again, Russo, if you come back to this town, or even whisper my name, I will forget I ever showed you mercy. And I will take months to show you why a Moretti's mercy is more valuable than any treasure. Is that clear? Clear, Russo breathed, completely defeated. Then vanish. Russo and his crew scurried away, desperate to escape like vermin from a flood. In moments, the warehouse was quiet, holding only Dante, his soldiers, and me. The silence was overwhelming after the tension. Dante looked at me, and I could see the weariness in his eyes. The rush was gone, leaving behind a man who looked like he had lived a lifetime in one night. You should have gone to the car with Marco, he said softly. I probably should have. I felt dizzy, and he was instantly there to steady me. But I had to see. I had to know what I was getting into. And do you know now? His arms went around me, gentle with my injuries, and I sagged against him, too weak to stand on my own. I know you are a man of your word. I know that loyalty is everything to you, and that you would destroy the world for your son. I gazed up at this gorgeous, lethal man who had become my stability in just 2 days. And I know that you think I am worth protecting, even if I cannot figure out the reason. Because you jumped, he said plainly, his hand rising to gently cup my cheek. Because you had to choose between saving yourself or saving a child, and you did not even pause. In a world where everyone plans their every action, you acted from the heart. How could I do anything less than protect a person with that kind of courage? I am not brave, I breathed. I am scared to death of you, of this life, and of what it says about me that I no longer want to run away. Bravery and fear can exist together, Elena. In fact, they usually do. His thumb softly stroked my cheek, and his eyes held an emotion I was afraid to identify. You still have a choice to go. I can arrange a safe place for you. A new name, plenty of cash for a new beginning. You are not forced to live in this shadow. The offer was real. I could tell by his tone. He would release me if I wanted, but the idea of leaving, of going back to being unseen, to a life of being nobody, felt like I could not breathe. What if I choose to stay? The question came out of my own mouth. Not because I am a prisoner or scared, but because, for the very first time, I feel like I am important, like I am not just a ghost people ignore. What if this is what I want? What if I want you, model? He finished, his voice filled with a raw, surprising hope. Because I want you, Elena. I have wanted you since you threw your body onto that broken glass. You are now a part of me in ways I do not understand. And I do not want to look at it too closely. But you need to be certain. My world is not a kind place. It will try you, and it will break you if you are not careful. Once you are in this life, there is no leaving it. I pictured my cold studio apartment and my shifts at the restaurant where I was just another face. My entire life was a cycle of tips, rent, and being completely unseen. Then, I imagined Mateo's small hand holding mine, his pure happiness, Dante's intense protectiveness. The way he looked at me as if I was everything. I felt important, noticed, and needed. I am sure, I said, and I knew it was true. I choose this. I choose you. Dante's face completely changed. He was flooded with relief and a feeling of ownership, along with something much deeper. Then you are mine, Elena Santos, completely. And I always protect what is mine. He kissed me right there in the warehouse, with his men all around us and the memory of violence in the air. It felt like a promise sealed with blood and broken glass. It was the taste of a future I never knew I wanted, but now I could not imagine life without it. When he drew back, he rested his forehead on mine. Let's go home. Home. He did not say his house, he said home. It felt as if I was always meant to be there, in his fortress, in his life, and in his dangerous world. And perhaps I was. Maybe my destiny was set the instant I saw a child in trouble. Perhaps some lives are meant to collide, drawn together by a force that neither one can fight. As Dante led me to the car, his arm firmly around me, I glanced back at the warehouse. This was the place where the invisible waitress named Elena Santos had ceased to exist. In her place, someone new was born, someone who mattered, who had a place, and who was claimed by a man with the power to change her world. This new life came at a cost of blood, fear, and all the security I once had. But as Dante helped me into the car, his hand taking mine with a gentle possessiveness, I knew I would do it all over again. Some prisons are worth choosing, some dangerous men are worth loving, and some debts, those paid with courage, blood, and the defense of a child, can never truly be settled. You can only honor them for the rest of your life. 3 months later, I was in Dante's study. He now called it our study. I watched snow blanket the gardens through giant windows. The marks on my back were now just faint silver lines. They were like medals I had learned to see with pride, instead of shame. I could hear Mateo's laugh coming from another part of the house. He was likely in the kitchen, where Agnesi was showing him how to bake his grandmother's cookies. He now called me Elena Mama, and my heart nearly exploded with joy each time. Strong arms came around me from behind, always gentle with my scars, and Dante rested his chin on my shoulder. What is on your mind? How much my life has changed, I said. I leaned into his warmth, a feeling of both safety and peril. I used to think I wanted to be invisible, but I just wanted the right person to see me. And am I the right person? He sounded amused, but I could hear the real question underneath. I turned to face him, looking into the dark eyes that had filled my thoughts from the very beginning. You are the only person, Dante. The one I risked everything for. The one who was there to catch me. And I always will be, he promised. He sealed it with a kiss that felt like an eternity. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the world in a quiet white layer. But inside Dante's stronghold, inside the home we created from violence and bravery, and an unexpected love, everything was warm and glowing. I threw myself onto broken glass to protect a child. But by doing that, I also rescued myself. Not all stories have a happy or sad ending. Our story was a mix of both, a complicated pattern of darkness and light, of violence and gentleness, of fear and a love so strong it could survive anything. And I would not change one single scar. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.